Good morning, everyone. I am Matt Fruman, Ward 3 Council Member and Chairperson of the Committee on Human Services. Today is Monday, May 4th, and we are meeting in person in room 123 of the John A. Wilson Building and virtually via Zoom. The time is now 9:07 a.m. Today, we are conducting the Budget Oversight Hearing on the Office of Lottery and Gaming, or OLG. OLG is the regulatory body over all licensed gaming in the District of Columbia, including lottery, charitable gaming, and sports wagering. Its mission is to responsibly maximize revenue generation for the District of Columbia through the sale of innovative lottery and sports wagering products. OLG functions in a manner different from many other district agencies, as it is an enterprise fund, meaning OLG generates revenue that it uses both to run the agency and to transfer to the general fund. Since its inception in 1982, the DC Lottery has transferred more than $2.43 billion to the district's general fund. That money goes towards balancing the district's budget and supporting essential services such as education, recreation, and parks, safety, and senior services. OLG ensures it provides gaming regulation and oversight that upholds the highest standards of integrity and public trust, putting the safety of players above all else. I look forward to delving into the inner workings of the OLG budget and how it plans to maximize revenue responsibly for the district during this upcoming fiscal year. As a point of clarification, there will be a separate hearing today following this one that will focus on the proposed iGaming legislation that was referred to the committee. The hearing we are conducting now will focus exclusively on reviewing the proposed FY27 budget for OLG and not the details of that proposed legislation. There will, as I said, be a time for that today. I would like now to offer a note on logistics. To ensure we hear from all members of the public, the committee will strictly apply time limits on witness testimony. All witnesses will have no more than 3 minutes to speak. First, we will call witnesses who are here in person. We only have one in-person witness listed today, but when I call your name, please come to the table at the front. Please press the button on your microphone before speaking to turn on your mic. The red light indicates your mic is on. After our witness is done providing his testimony, I, and if other council members come, may ask a series of questions before moving to our virtual witnesses. I'll now call our in-person witness, Aaron Sanchez. I don't see Mr. Sanchez. So if Mr. Sanchez arrives, we will give him the opportunity to testify in person. Should he choose to join us online, he's welcome to do that. In the meantime, is there anyone else here who wanted to testify in person who wasn't listed? Does not look like that is the case. I will now call our virtual witnesses to speak in panels of 4. For each witness, I will call your name and a member of my staff will make you a panelist. If you wish to appear on video, you must click the button in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen that looks like a video camera. Please remain muted until it is your turn to testify. When it is your turn to testify, please unmute yourself. Once all our virtual witnesses on a panel in each panel of 4 have testified, I, and if other council members join, may ask a round of questions, so please stay on the Zoom muted until you are recalled. For any technical difficulties, you can send a message to the host, which is labeled Committee on Human Services, and they will follow up with you. Additionally, if you are having trouble gaining access to the Zoom and you have pre-registered, you can reach my team at humanservices@dccouncil.gov, and they will try to resolve your issue. Now let's turn to our first panel of virtual witnesses. Jordan Briggs, Elise Cohn, Christopher Calitri, Richard Baldwin. All right, wonderful. It looks like all are in place. Jordan Briggs, when you are ready, we can start.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jordan Briggs. I'm an attorney at IFRA Law, a boutique gaming law firm based here in DC. IFRA Law has many accolades in the gaming space, including being instrumental in creating the legislative and regulatory framework for online gaming in Delaware, New Jersey, and Nevada. I'm here to talk about the legality of implementing off-track betting sites and historical horse racing in DC. I'll refer to these as OTBs and HHR in my testimony. Under the parimutuel laws of the state and agreements with racetracks, OTBs allow patrons to place parimutuel wagers on live horse races without physically being present at the racetrack. Bets are pooled together, the operators take a regulated commission, and winners share the remaining pools. HHR machines offer a form of parimutuel wagering that fits well into this framework. On HHR machines, users may engage with parimutuel wagering with pooled bets on the basis of previously run horse races, irrespective of the on-screen visual. We believe that federal law does not prohibit DC from creating a framework to license OTBs and provide HHR in the district. The Johnson Act prohibits the interstate transportation of gambling devices, and this definition includes DC and states. However, the Johnson Act has an exemption for any machine designed and manufactured primarily for use at a racetrack in connection with parimutuel betting. This exemption applies to OTBs and HHR because they both provide parimutuel wagering under government licensing schemes with permission from the racetracks. The Act also exempts devices explicitly enumerated as lawful by state statute. Accordingly, under either exemption, the district's authorization of OTB sites and HHR machines would not run afoul of federal law, and the door remains open for the district to consider authorization and regulation of these machines. Several states already allow HHR, including New Hampshire, Virginia, and Wyoming. In these states, facilities that host HHR machines must be authorized or licensed by the State Racing Commission or equivalent body. States with OTB and HHR have benefited greatly. In Virginia, HHR had $6 million in statutory withholdings, benefiting general tax funds and other state directives. Further, OTBs are physical locations. Placing physical HHR machines inside authorized OTBs can provide certain consumer protections as well as direct financial boosts to the local community. OTB facilities need security guards and operational control managers, staff for customer service, kitchen staff, wait staff, and more, i.e., on-state employees who live in the area. Thus, we believe there is a strong justification for the district to create a legal framework that would authorize a licensure system for OTB sites in the district and the allotment of a certain number of HHR machines to each OTB. Each state adopts its own regulatory framework for gaming, and we encourage the council to look to other states such as Virginia to look for examples on how to implement such a system, how to increase tax revenue, and create jobs.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Elise Cohn.
Good morning, Chairman Freeman and members of the committee. My name is Elise Cohen, managing member of Long Shots LLC, OTB and Sportsbook based in Frederick, Maryland, and I'm the only 100% woman-owned sportsbook in the country. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. I'm here to urge the district to take a serious and timely look at authorizing off-track betting and historic horse racing as part of its broader economic and fiscal strategy. The district is entering a period of real fiscal pressure. The mayor's proposed 27 budget reflects a significant gap driven by slowing revenue growth and rising costs. That reality requires the district to think differently, not just about cutting spending, but about responsibly generating new reoccurring revenue. HHR and OTB represent exactly that kind of opportunity. Based on comparable jurisdictions and adjusted for the district's market, these programs could generate between 92 and 130 million in annual recurring revenue without increasing existing taxes. At the same time, the policy landscape around gaming is evolving quickly. Neighboring Maryland recently passed legislation to study historic horse racing, signaling that jurisdictions in our region are actively evaluating this model and positioning themselves for future revenue and investment. Here in the district, the council is also considering iGaming, a fully digital form of wagering. That is a very different policy choice. iGaming is entirely online, widely accessible, and raises a distinct set of responsible gaming concerns. By contrast, OTB and HHR are in-person, facility-based, and tightly regulated. It creates jobs, drives foot traffic, and operates in a controlled environment, not on a phone in every pocket. If the district is prepared to consider expanding online wagering, it should also consider a more controlled in-person model that generates jobs and tangible economic activity. We also want to be clear on an important point. There is a defined legal pathway for authorizing HHR and OTB in the district. By structuring HHR's parimutuel wagering consistent with traditional horse racing and explicitly authorizing it in the statute, the council can create a clear and defensible framework that aligns with how these programs operate in other states. The model we are proposing is intentionally measured and appropriate for the district. We envision 2 to 4 high-quality, destination-style venues, not casinos, but premium entertainment spaces, each combining HHR terminals, simulcast wagering, and food and beverage. These would complement existing commercial corridors and attract both residents and visitors. At full scale, this approach could support hundreds of jobs, increase foot traffic, and new opportunities for district-based contractors and workforce development programs. Finally, this proposal aligns directly with the district's broader economic strategy. At a time when the district is making difficult budget decisions, this is a pragmatic option that deserves serious consideration. For those reasons, we respectfully request the administration and the council to take the necessary steps to evaluate this proposal. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Christopher Calitri?
Hold on one second. Here we go. Good morning. Thank you. Sorry about the technical difficulty. My name is Chris Calitri, and I serve as Director of Historical Horse Racing at Ainsworth Game Technology. Ainsworth is a global manufacturer of gaming equipment, and we develop and supply historical horse racing systems in regulated jurisdictions across the United States. I'm here today to provide a practical industry perspective on how historical horse racing, commonly referred to as HHR, actually works and how it can be implemented in a controlled, compliant, and transparent way. At its core, HHR is not a new form of gambling. It is a modernized version of parimutuel wagering on horse racing. We saw the Derby yesterday, very similar. Each wager is placed into a shared pool, and payouts are determined by the distribution of wagers within that pool, not by a house-advantaged or fixed odds model. What makes HHR unique is that it uses anonymized, previously run horse races. Before placing a wager, the patron is shown a limited past performance data, similar to what you would see in a racing form, but the identity of the races, horses, and jockeys is not revealed until after the wager is placed. This preserves the integrity of the parimutuel system while allowing for a modern, accessible experience. From an operational standpoint, these systems are highly regulated. Every race outcome is drawn from a secure database of historical races. The wagering pools are independently managed and auditable. The systems are tested and certified to ensure compliance with state law and regulatory standards. I want to be clear on one point that often comes up. HHR terminals are not slot machines. They do not use a random number generator to determine outcomes. Each result is tied to an actual previously run race, and each wager participates in a parimutuel pool. In jurisdictions where HHR has been authorized, such as Kentucky and Virginia, these systems are developed or deployed exclusively in licensed in-person facilities. That structure provides regulators with clear oversight, allows for robust compliance monitoring, and ensures that activity is conducted in a controlled environment. From an economic standpoint, HHR facilities are not just wagering venues. They are physical destinations. They support jobs and operations, food and beverage, security, and facility management. They drive foot traffic and create opportunities for complementary development. Equally important, these systems can be scaled and tailored. Policymakers can determine the number of locations, the number of terminals, and the regulatory conditions under which they operate. That flexibility allows jurisdictions to design a model that aligns with their specific policy goals. If the district chooses to move forward, the key to success will be clarity in the statutory framework and consistency in regulation. With those in place, HHR can be implemented in a way that is transparent, well-regulated, and aligned with the district's broader economic development objectives. Thanks again for the opportunity to testify. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Baldwin?
Good morning, Chairman, Freeman, members of the committee. My name is Rich Baldwin, Managing Partner of GGHM, a leading global gaming industry advisory. I work in the gaming and racing sector, focused on the development and operation of wagering facilities, including off-track betting and historical horse racing. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. As the district looks for responsible ways to generate revenue in a constrained budget environment, I believe HHR paired with OTBs is a practical, data-driven opportunity. Our firm, GGHM, has looked closely at the district. Based on national gaming market benchmarks and DC's population and income profile, we believe a right-sized HHR market could support roughly 1,500 to 2,000 terminals and generate on the order of 300 to 350 million in annual gaming revenue. That's not speculative. That's based on how comparable markets perform when adjusted for population and income. At a 25 to 35% effective tax rate, that level of activity would translate into approximately 80 to 115 million annually in direct tax revenue for the district. That is meaningful recurring revenue that can help support core services. We are currently studying more closely, but at present, we estimate the district currently generates approximately 200 million in annual gaming revenue across the nearby gaming facilities in Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia, resulting in significant direct tax revenues for those states. But just as important as the revenue is how it's generated. This is real place-based economic activity. HHR operates in physical locations, often paired with OTBs, which means capital investment, activation of underutilized space, and spillover into surrounding neighborhoods. These are facilities that employ people, draw foot traffic, and support local businesses. That stands in contrast to the district's current gaming mix. Today, we estimate at least 90% of sports betting revenue in DC is generated online, with only 10% occurring in retail locations. So the district is already heavily weighted towards a model that produces limited in-person economic activity. At the same time, we understand the council has begun to consider potential expansion of online gaming. So the question isn't whether the district will evaluate new gaming options, it's what kind of model the district ultimately wants to prioritize. If the district is going to explore expanded online wagering, we recommend it should also consider a more controlled in-person model that creates jobs, activates space, and generates visible economic activity. And importantly, this is not a zero-sum proposition. In states like Virginia, HHR and casino gaming have grown side by side. This is about growing the market and recapturing dollars that are already leaving the district, not simply shifting revenue from one operator to the other. In closing, it's our understanding the district is facing real budget pressures and policy choices. HHR is a proven, scalable tool that can generate revenue, create jobs, and anchor economic activity in ways that purely online models cannot. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. On this whole question of off-track betting and HHR, this is, for me, new. We're in the middle of the budget season. I think we have been looking at iGaming for some time, but this is new. It may not be new in the world. It's new in the conversation here in the District of Columbia. I'm grateful to all of you for coming forward. I just don't want to raise hopes that this is something that's going to be dealt with in this budget process. I think too many other things that are happening. There were a lot of numbers that got thrown out, and one set of numbers was about Virginia and revenue. It sounded like $6 million in revenue. And then Ms. Cohn talked about the potential of 92 to 133 million dollars in revenue. And then Mr. Baldwin talked about the potential of between 300 and 350 million dollars in revenue. Pretty big range there. So help me understand, in Virginia, Ms. Briggs, I think you spoke to Virginia. I think you said it was $6 million in revenue. What does that represent? Is that a limited number of locations?
Yeah, so that 6 million is, I believe that's 2024 data, and that's statutory withholdings. So that's specifically what went back to the state, not that doesn't include what goes back to the community and to the OTB sites. So that is just statutory withholdings, and that benefited the general tax fund. It also went straight to a veterinary college that specializes in taking care of horses in Virginia, and a few other state directives.
But is that for one location with a limited number of machines? What generated that 6 million in state withholdings?
Yeah, that was across the state for the HHR machines.
And how many machines are there in Virginia?
I would have to double check that for that year specifically.
I mean, can you see how that number, and then we'll get to Mr. Baldwin and how he got to the 300 million, they're pretty different. So there's something about it that results in it being a much more limited number. Ms. Cohn, you offered the 92 million to 133 million a year. How did you come up with that number?
So Mr. Baldwin's numbers and my numbers we're working off the same database. So the 92 to 130 million is actually tax revenue. So that's reoccurring tax revenue that the district would benefit from each year. That is based off of a fully mature market at about 1,500 machines across the district, roughly 1,500 machines across the district.
Okay, so then maybe Mr. Baldwin help me. I interpreted the 300 to 350. Is that overall revenue that you were referring to? And so the tax revenue would be 25% of that or something like that? How do I understand those numbers?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay. Yes. So yeah, based on our independent analysis of the market and the DC market, just based upon it's all zip code based in terms of our analysis, just based on the population and income profile of all DC zip codes throughout the district, we estimate a right-sized HHR market could support a range of 1,500 to 2,000 terminals, and the annual gaming revenue, not tax number, that we project is in the range of 300 to 350 million. So assuming a 25 to 35% tax rate on the lower end, that translates into 80 million in direct tax revenue to the district, and at the higher end of the range, it would be 115 million in annual tax revenue.
Okay, and so then, I mean, it takes me back, and Ms. Briggs, you can provide information on this. If it was a 25% tax in Virginia, that would suggest 24 million in gaming revenue in Virginia, which would, I would think, suggest a much smaller number of the machines. But this is the beginning of a process of consideration of this, so I think let's have a back and forth about it. It's interesting to me when you do the revenue projections, it appears all related to the HHR and not the off-track betting. What's the revenue that you estimate out of off-track betting? Or have you focused on that?
Yeah. Hi, this is Rich Baldwin. If you can hear me. So the analysis that we've done thus far was focused purely on the assuming that the OTB locations would be the locations that would house the HHR machines. We have not yet or been asked to quantify what the potential OTB revenues and resulting taxes would be specifically, but that's certainly something we could potentially help and follow up with.
Okay. Because it is the value of it sounds like the value of the OTB is about having brick and mortar locations that people come to, but the real money gets made on the HHR machines. Is that fair?
That is fair, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much for your testimony. And as I said, this is new to me and I think new to others. And we will look at this. I think that's what you were trying to encourage us to do, is to take a look at this. And so I think you can consider it a success to that point. Don't want to make any promises. Definitely don't want to make any promises. But you have put it on our radar screen in a way that was different than a couple of months ago. I think we have testimony from Ms. Briggs, and well, I don't need to call you out too much, but Ms. Cohn, if you have a chance, if you can send in your written testimony, and also for the previous hearing from DEMPED, maybe you have done that already, but thank you very much for your testimony, and we will turn to our next panel.
Thank you.
Steve May, Stacy Wisenant, Tori Key, and Janice Richardson Sloan. Okay, and Steve May, when you are ready.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the distinguished committee. It's an honor and a pleasure today to address the committee to explain the role of the independent testing lab in the gaming industry and kind of describe how I could potentially help assist with this discussion of these gaming policy decisions. So for the last 4 years, actually as of Saturday, 4 years, I've been at Gaming Laboratories International, or GLI. We're an independent testing laboratory with and consulting group when it comes to gaming regulations. We're based in New Jersey, but we serve regulators worldwide, approximately 1,700 employees across 6 different continents. In the United States specifically, we serve state and tribal regulators, as well as legislators and city councils and other members like yourself. We actually do a lot of work with the DC Lottery as of now already. GLI primarily issues certification reports on virtually every kind of gaming device. We kind of ensure regulators that gaming device meets or exceeds the regulations or technical standards of whatever that jurisdiction would be. But that work also provides us to bring on a number of experts onto our government and regulatory affairs team, which is what I'm on. And our work allows me to be here today to kind of help with this group and to clarify any of the public policy decisions you're making when it comes to the technology, such as describing how various gaming systems and devices work, and to really offer that independent and unbiased explanation as needed. And that's solely why I'm here today. GLI we are prepared to provide any kind of technical support related to HHR or iGaming or OTBs or anything that you need, and kind of describe differences in gaming systems. We don't provide any legal opinions on anything. We don't really do, that's not really our area, but we really just are there to explain the technology behind it, not to make any decisions on whether it should be allowed or shouldn't be allowed. I'm not being paid for this work. GLI is not being paid for this work. We really just do this to help regulators and legislators and council members like yourself make these policies, or help make those policy decisions. We also have a very long and productive history with the regulators in DC and the surrounding states, and don't ever want to jeopardize that. So if there are any technical questions that arise today about the technology or functionality behind HHR, feel free to reach out to me or ask on this call today. But that's all I'm really here for. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Stacy Wisenant. Tori Key.
Hi, everyone. Tori Key here from Key Play Advisors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly here, and I appreciate everyone's time and effort with trying to bring more innovation to the district in regards to gaming. So my primary focus has been on the gaming industry for a number of years now, and primarily been focused on sports betting. And I was actually involved with DC in regard to the small retail locations getting involved with the sports betting space. So I really want to highlight in general, because I hear from everybody today speaking about HHR expansion potentially into the city. And I know we're going to be speaking about iGaming and so on moving forward. And a lot of the world is just moving to digital, of course. But I want to keep in mind as we're talking about this physical aspect that we're not forgetting about the small businesses and CBEs that rely on tight margins a lot of times in the city due to them operating particularly in F&B, food and beverage, and other industries where they're really grasping at straws to really figure out how to add ancillary revenue to their bottom line. So ultimately, I want us to keep in mind, and of course, we'll submit a written testimony how small businesses can be a part of these different innovative aspects that are going to be coming to the city, whether it's having satellite locations where you can look at different states like Arizona that actually has satellite locations for OTBs that kind of operate as agents, if you will, of the main license holder, or looking at a state like Virginia where you have a Rosie's that almost operates like a mini casino, but is still not a kind of a master licensed casino operator. So I really want to just highlight with this brief amount of time that I think there are a lot of number of ways that small businesses can be involved. And also it could be a part of the CBE requirement that's going to be put upon these license holders. So maybe they have a certain amount of their spend dedicated to having licensed locations that are going to operate as satellites under them, where there's maybe a few HHR machines or different aspects that are going to be able to generate some revenue for these small businesses across the board. So I just want to make sure we're highlighting this, because I believe after dealing with sports betting in the district and seeing how everything progressed with the initial intent of getting small businesses involved, it's easy to kind of forget about the small guys that are typically going to get lost in the shuffle here. So I'll give my time back, but thank you for the time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Janice Richardson Sloan.
Good morning, Chairman Furman, members of the Committee on Human Services. My name is Janice Richardson Sloan, and I'm the Legal Counsel and Compliance Officer for Arc Gaming and Technologies. Now, Arc Gaming is a licensed games of skill operator in Georgia, and we recently received our distributor's license in the district. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Arc Gaming respectfully offers the committee 2 recommendations that we believe would significantly increase games of skill play and tax revenue within the district. First, we recommend the district raise its $599 max payout per play. Now, of the 13 states with regulated cash payout markets, the district's cap is by far the lowest. Illinois caps max payouts at $11.99, Wyoming at $3,000, and Nebraska imposes no payout cap at all. Notably, legislation passed by the Virginia General Assembly during the session that recently ended would have set their maximum payout per play at $4,000. Now, Illinois offers the best example of how increasing the maximum payout level can benefit a regulated market. Illinois first authorized video gaming terminals in 2009 with a $500 maximum payout per play, and then raised that cap to $11.99 in June 2019. After the payout increase, net terminal income increased nearly 13%, and average monthly state tax collections more than 24%, increasing from $37.7 million to $46.8 million. And that growth has consistently increased. Annual VGT tax revenue in Illinois has grown each year since the change, more than doubling between fiscal year 2018 and fiscal year 2025. And there's every reason to expect that the district would see comparable growth if it modernized its own cap. We request the district raise its max payout to $19.99, bringing the district closer to peer regulated jurisdictions while keeping payouts below the 2,000 threshold that triggers additional federal tax reporting obligations. Secondly, we suggest the district expand authorization for games of skill terminals to include off-premise alcohol retailers, establishments with Class A and Class B licenses. Other regulated jurisdictions already allow cash payout terminals in a broader range of retail environments, and these establishments are already required to uphold age restriction policies since they hold liquor licenses. And as of early this year, the district has 237 Class A and 183 Class B licensees, for a total of 420 potential additional host locations. Now, we estimate that should both suggested changes be approved, approximately $141 million would be generated annually. And this calculation is based on a market of approximately 4,000 machines. Now, DC's hospitality and small business community have struggled significantly since the pandemic, and skilled gaming is a proven way of providing real recurring revenue to DC small businesses by drawing customers in, encouraging them to stay longer, and giving these establishments a much needed revenue stream, while also growing the district's tax base. We urge you to consider these two common sense steps, which we believe will ultimately benefit the district. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. So, Ms. Richardson-Sloan, what are these machines? Help me understand what's at the heart of this.
Right, so games of skill machines, which have already been approved by the district, they're allowed for 5 terminals per location already within the district. They're obviously regulated by the OLG. We're not requesting any new machines that aren't the machines that have already been approved. Now, the difference between VGTs and games of skill is basically they're similar play, but VGTs are considered to be games of chance versus the games of skill, which have been approved here. However, the play is still similar, even though there is no element of chance, obviously, in the games of skill approved within DC at the moment.
But what does that look like? What is the game of skill? I've not done it before, but give me an example of a game played on a machine.
All right, so there's several different games. There right now, one of the ones that we're with, we have a contract with a manufacturer called Vanilla. They're in the process of getting approved right now. We have another one with Omega, and they've already been approved within the district. It's basically similar to a game of chance, in the sense that you make your bet. Several slots will come into play, right? You make your decisions and your denominations. There is an element of skill, so you do choose whatever it is that you're planning to do in the game, and then there's a result that comes from it. Are you there?
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, I'm here.
I can't see you, sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm still, maybe I need to go and look at some to understand it better, but I still don't quite understand.
Well, these machines have already been approved within the district, and you can see them in obviously bars and taverns. Right now, the market is very small, and I'm assuming it is because some of the games that have been approved, the skill that's required might be a little bit too tough for the players. I know that happened with one that was called Dragon something several years back. But different games have been approved by GLI within the district that play, like I said, similar to video gaming terminals.
Okay, I'll have to.
But with an element of skill, obviously.
Okay, I hear you. So I need to look at it. I mean, they're
And
all
I can
different.
provide you, again, being an attorney, I think the question is more perhaps on the gameplay per se. Better for somebody from our technical group to provide that information, and I definitely can forward that information to you, and that for your benefit, of course.
Okay, appreciate that. You referenced Virginia, and you said
I said.
that they had legislation in this most recent session that would have changed the cap to 4,000. What happened with that legislation?
Well, as we know, the legislation got vetoed. And now the reason stated for the veto was specifically that there wasn't a centralized, exclusively institution or commission, gaming commission, that would have obviously regulated the specific types of games. And that was the reason why it got vetoed, or at least that was a reason that the governor stated.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Key, when you were talking about the role of small retail and in a couple of different rounds on these kinds of issues, I have been sensitive to trying to make sure that we don't have a setback for our small retailers around the lottery contract, for example. When you're talking about this, is this satellite, are you focused on the HHR? Is that what this is about? That different small retailers would have access to HHR machines?
Yeah, good question. I guess to expand on that, it could apply to HHR as well as, I know we're going to be speaking about iGaming, but that's going to be focused digitally. But I think there's a way that you could still partner with these locations as an iGaming entity to figure out ways to make sure that they're a part of this. Now, it doesn't mean that they need to actually have some type of software on site, but making sure that these retail locations can be agents or partners, whether that's for marketing purposes or so on. But if it's going to be physical machines for HHR or games of skill, as Janice just mentioned, I think any way to expand upon these to get these retail locations more involved. And once again, we want to make sure everything is safe and secure, but making sure that that barrier is not too high for an F&B location or somewhere that's a retail location to clear, to make sure that they can still have some forms of ancillary revenue as gaming continues to expand in the district.
Okay. And you referenced Rosie's in Virginia, and I'm trying to understand this Virginia landscape. And is Rosie's is the idea that Rosie's is, what is Rosie's, and how big of a portion of the Virginia HHR world is Rosie's?
Yeah, I mean, so Rosie's, from my understanding, isn't the actual master license holder. They're kind of operating as almost like this major entertainment hub that is, looked at as like a satellite location. I believe Kentucky Downs, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to follow up on that specifically. But Steve's raising his hand, maybe has the answer there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was about to turn to Steve anyways, so I'll let Steve start. Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Key. I'll let Steve
thank you.
start with answering that question, and then we can turn to some other things.
Yes, there are two different racetracks in Virginia. There's Colonial Downs, and then there's another harness track named Shenandoah Downs. Shenandoah doesn't have any HHR operations. Colonial Downs is actually owned by Churchill Downs Incorporated, and they're allowed to offer HHR at these various satellite facilities, and it's the maximum number of terminals is dependent on the population of the town that they're going into. But they've got some very large facilities now. There's a very large one in the Richmond area, and now there's a newer one that's opening up in Dumfries. Their maximum number of HHR terminals in the state is 5,000 by statute, and that's also tied to the number of race dates that they're running at Colonial Downs. So I think I can't remember that number. I think it's maybe 50 terminals per race day or 100 terminals per race day that they're allowed to offer at their various facilities. But they have some these Rosie's facilities that are fairly small. They only have 150 or so machines, and then I think Dumfries is going to be quite a bit larger. I don't know the final number on that, but they're right now at about 3,000 machines, or 3 or 4,000 in the state. So they still got some room for growth there. But it's really just it's a network of different places that they have around the state of these satellite facilities. Hopefully that
Okay.
helps.
I mean, and it's actually, you are exactly as advertised. You said you want it to be a resource, and so there you were,
Okay, that's
providing a resource. Appreciate that, and trying to come to understand this. Maybe you can help me on a different thing, because one of the things that we'll hear this afternoon, and I think I've heard a little already, is estimates of the numbers of people in the District of Columbia who are already engaging in these different kinds of games and sectors. And I wonder where those numbers come from. And do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, and I'm really not the expert on something like that. I'm more of a technical expert on that. But I mean, there are a number of different gaming options out there, both legal and illegal, and sometimes I call them gray areas. But I mean, there's still, even though there's legal options for sports wagering, there's still plenty of illegal operators that are out there taking money. They offer no protections for the players in those situations. So we always support a legal and regulated gaming industry, but to actually make those economic numbers, and that's just not something that GLI is involved in. So we often are asked to kind of collect numbers from various states, but it could be all over the board on that. So not really my area. So sorry about that.
No, so if you don't have the answer, then you don't have the answer. That it's a little bit of a heads up to other people who may be testifying going down the line, that I mean, one of the arguments around these things is you ought to regulate it because it's happening, and if it's not regulating it doesn't mean that it won't happen. And understanding what that dynamic is, and whether when you regulate it you increase the amount of it significantly or capture something that's already happening, that is a question that is on lots of people's minds. Again, really appreciate your willingness to try to be helpful on these issues. I don't want to do too much pushing on a bruise, but we did have an episode around the DC3, DC4, DC5 games. I don't know if you're familiar with that, and I do hope things happen, but I do hope that we can all work together to address that in a way that's fair to all of the players. Do you know what I'm referring to?
I believe so on that. Yes, we work with some of the integrity monitors out there, and one of the things that we do is internal control audits for operators to make sure that they have their internal controls in place, and we do some recommendations on those to improve those, but that's always testing against a known standard out there. So having just saying it's regulated is one thing, but having true internal control standards that you expect the operators to meet or exceed, is more important, quite frankly, at the end of the day, so that those regulations actually have some kind of teeth in them. And so that is one of the things that we've done, and we do. I'm almost certain we do some of the integrity work in the DC area right now. I know we do for virtually every other regulated sports gaming jurisdiction. We do cybersecurity follow-ups. We do they have to have a recertification on a periodic basis, and we do those for a number of different jurisdictions. So we try to play a role in that as much as we can. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to having those internal controls in place and actually implementing them.
Yeah, I hear you on that, but there's also a certification process, and I think you guys do the certification process, and the certification process needs to be reliable as well. I hope we can work these things through.
You bet. I'm always here to be a resource. So thanks.
All right. Thank you very much to this panel. I think that I don't know if Mr. Sanchez is here or online, or if there is anyone else online who was hoping to testify. Hearing none, I think we will now turn to our government witness. So, so we will now be joined by Randy Burnside, Executive Director of the Office of Lottery and Gaming, and his team. I invite each person who will testify on behalf of OLG today to join us at the table in front of me. It is the practice of this committee to place our government witnesses under oath. So if you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Human Services is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. You may begin your testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Fruman, committee members, and staff of the Committee on Human Services. I am Thomas R. Burnside, the Executive Director of the Office of Lottery and Gaming. Thank you for this opportunity to testify today regarding OLG's proposed fiscal year 2027 budget. Joining me today are my colleagues Eugene Blasenko, our Chief Operating Officer, Ridgely Bennett, our Chief Counsel, Peter Alvarado, our Director of Regulation and Oversight, and Alex Akpajori, our Agency Fiscal Officer. The mission of OLG is to responsibly maximize revenue generation for the District of Columbia through the sale of innovative lottery and sports wagering products while providing gaming regulation and oversight that upholds the highest standards of integrity and public trust. So strategic revenue planning coupled with disciplined expenditure management enables OLG to provide consistent annual transfers to the district's general fund, thereby supporting critical public services, including education, parks and recreation, public safety, housing, and services for seniors and children. OLG's fiscal year 2027 proposed budget includes an operating budget of $222,201,452.96 full-time equivalents. This reflects a decrease of $49,998,245 or 18.4% from fiscal year 2026 approved budget of $272,199,697. This variance is primarily a reflection of the continued impact of the Sports Wagering Amendment Act of 2024, which modified the district sports wagering operation. These adjustments are based on underlying projections, operational needs, and programmatic priorities. They represent a further budget calibration rather than a fundamental shift, ensuring that our expectations remain realistic. The DC Lottery continues to demonstrate resilience and adaptability in a rapidly changing marketplace. We expect to see growth in several key product categories, led by strong performance in iLottery, monitor games, and fast play games. These offerings align with shifting consumer preferences toward digital engagement and instant win experiences, and are helping to expand our reach to new audiences while modernizing the lottery's portfolio. We also expect the mobile sports wagering market to continue to mature and deliver additional tax revenues. Our traditional products also continue to provide steady, reliable contributions. Scratch-off ticket sales remain one of our most consistent revenue generators. Likewise, the national jackpot games, such as Powerball, continue to perform well, particularly during periods of elevated jackpots that draw widespread public interest and boost overall sales. Despite these areas of growth, we face several important challenges. The competitive landscape for entertainment and gaming is evolving rapidly, and OLG must continue to adapt to meet player expectations. Broader economic pressures, such as inflation in consumer goods and shifts in discretionary spending, also influence purchasing behavior across the product lines. Additionally, our legacy number games continue to decline, driven largely by an aging player base, long-term changes in consumer preferences, and a reduction in daily foot traffic that we are seeing at retail. In fiscal year 2027, we remain focused on advancing responsible growth, strengthening our product mix, and modernizing our operations to ensure the lottery continues to deliver strong, sustainable revenue to the District of Columbia. I also want to address on April 21st, OLG identified a configuration issue affecting our DC3, DC4, and DC5 games. After conducting an immediate internal review, we requested a full assessment by our third-party vendor Smart Play International and the third-party independent testing lab Gaming Labs International that certified the machines for service. Their analysis confirmed that from March 31 to April 21 of this year, a coding error prevented duplicate numbers such as 111, 7765, or 89843 from being generated in our midday and evening drawings. It is important to note that our 11:30 p.m. night draw was not affected. We acted swiftly once the issue was detected. The underlying error has been identified and corrected, and we are confident in the integrity of our draw system moving forward. We are committed to transparency, accountability, and ensuring that our players are made whole. To that end, OLG is providing coupons, free plays, and additional chances to win for the players who were impacted. This reflects our commitment to fairness for our players and to maintaining the public trust. We appreciate the patience of our players and stakeholders and remain focused on upholding the highest standards of operational integrity. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm happy to provide additional information as needed, and I welcome any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I was going to start by inviting you to talk about that very issue, just to get it out of the way. You have spoken to it, but I wonder if you can speak briefly to what kinds of things you're trying to do to make your players whole for this issue. Maybe there are things that you already have done and things that may be in the works, but if you felt comfortable speaking to that briefly, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. Once we identified the issue, we took action. Both vendors have cooperated with us very well. We identified the problem. We fixed the problem. A tech was on site within 24 hours to make sure that our RNG devices were operating properly. Just to be safe, we used our backup system for a number of days until GLI could recertify everything. And then we had an outside third-party auditor also watch as we did tests. So I feel good about our draw systems at this point. Now, as far as taking care of our players, we had several challenges in doing that. First, players may not have their tickets anymore during the period of time. So we wanted to find a way to get those people the opportunity to be made whole. We were able to identify who our iLottery players were, so that made it easy. We credited those accounts back the impacted play amounts that they used. So that is available now. We also needed to figure out a mechanism to quickly produce coupons or refunds to our players. What was the most effective way we could do that? Unfortunately, we don't have a mechanism to issue checks to people that don't have a winning ticket. So our solution was a coupon system that would allow a free play that functions properly. So we're in the process of printing physical coupons that can be redeemed on our system at retail. So those players that were impacted at retail can go back to retail and they have an opportunity to play. People who don't have a ticket, we've also created an avenue for them to be made whole as well. We have waived the deposit requirements on our iLottery, and anyone who creates an account that goes in, puts in their information, they receive 10 free dollars of play on DC3, 4, and 5. That was the quickest, most feasible way we felt like we could address the mass of people that may have been impacted. So that's available. We're also going to conduct a second chance drawing later this summer for those affected that is loaded with $150,000 in prizes for those players. So we feel like that we've fixed the issue on the front end, and we've provided a pathway for all of our players at retail and online to be made whole. So we feel good about what we have so far, but we're very, very apologetic about what happened. We've also strengthened our internal controls. This is now something that has been put into our standard operating procedures to look for when our draw staff conducts drawings over the period of a certain number of days. So we've checked all of the boxes from the regulator standpoint, and we're trying to do our best to take care of, honestly, the best numbers players in the country. We have one of the highest per capita play of number games in the nation. So our players are very, very important to us, and we're going to do everything we can to make it right.
Really appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it sounds like in trying to get specifically to all of the different players, but and where you can't, generally to make benefits available to folks who might be in the pool of players. So it may be that there are some people who were harmed who don't get a benefit because they just don't get hit in one of these different ways or participate in one of these redemptions, but you're trying to create as many paths as possible. And it may well be that there are people who were not adversely impacted who will benefit because they'll do the iLottery thing. You can't get, in my sense is you can't get this perfectly, but you're trying to, if anything, overcompensate in the way in which you're reaching people. Is that a fair characterization?
That is a fair characterization, sir. We're trying to make people whole. Yes, there will be people who could benefit who had no adverse effects whatsoever, but there's no other avenue that our team could come up with that could make people whole who may have discarded a ticket. So that is the path that we chose. We would rather err on the side of more abundance than on not doing enough.
Okay, and you said that a tech was on the scene. I forgot how many hours. It wasn't very long. When you say that, is that a tech from one of the certifying companies?
Yes, sir. So when this problem arose and we were contacted from an outside entity that we may have an issue, we immediately investigated. Our draw staff immediately reviewed draw logs, and within just a few hours, I was able to call Smart Play directly. And to their praise, they quickly acted and checked, and they were able to realize that there was a configuration error that occurred on March 31st when they stood up our RNG devices. They admitted to it immediately, and they dispatched a tech the next day to check on the coding error. We had security present. We had an independent auditor present for that visit. They took care of the issue, and in less than 24 hours, it was fixed.
So, and this is Smart Play, and then there's also GLI that's
Yes,
in
sir.
the mix here. And you heard my back and forth with the fellow from GLI. I mean, these kinds of things shouldn't happen, but also there are protections in place to make sure that they're caught if something happens, and that those seem to fail. And so a lot of I do hope that everyone who has been touched by this can be part of the long-term solution and take responsibility for the roles that they've played in it.
I agree with that. We do everything we can to put systems in place to avoid problems like this from happening. But sometimes even the best make mistakes. And it's my understanding that the root of this problem was human error. And it's unfortunate, but there are checks and balances that failed also in the certification process as well. And everyone has taken responsibility for it, and we're strengthening those. I believe in public transparency and integrity in everything we do. And this is embarrassing. So I wanted to make sure that we moved quickly, openly, and did everything we could to put systems in place so that it doesn't happen again.
No, really appreciate that. And there is human error, but we pay for checks and balances, and they have to work too. And if they don't work, then there has to be some ownership of that fact. And it all puts me in the mind, and I could go on for a while about this, but very early in my legal career, I had a case about a failed launch of a satellite. And you might remember the space shuttle salvaged a satellite that was in geostationary orbit. That was the case that I worked on. And it was a simple coding error. And you could understand, I will digress too much because it's fun for me. It was a launch of a satellite from Intelsat in a Titan III rocket. And the Titan III, it was a big satellite, and the Titan III rocket had a big payload that usually had 2 satellites in it. And the software engineers said it's the first satellite out of the box, so we're going to code it as the first satellite out of the box. And the hardware people said it sits at the bottom of the payload, and so we're going to code it as the second. We're going to wire it as the second satellite out of the box. And it got to geostationary orbit and didn't separate from the rocket. And folks looked at it, and just like in your case, it took them 10 minutes to realize what caused the $100 million problem. But so what they ended up doing was they separated the satellite from the booster motor that would take it up to a geostationary orbit. It was in a low Earth orbit. And then the space shuttle came and grabbed it, put a new motor on it, and sent it up to a geostationary orbit. All to say there's human error, but there's supposed to be protections. And when there's not protections, that's a problem too. So, all right. Probably shouldn't have used all the public's time on my reminiscing. Let's turn to a different topic, which is well, actually, before we do, in this context, you referred to iLottery a bunch of times and how it was easier to solve for the iLottery players. What percentage of the lottery play is iLottery as opposed to ticket lottery? And what does the trend in that space look like?
Our iLottery is actively growing. When you look at our current numbers month over month, we see users that play actively in their accounts roughly, I would say in the neighborhood of 5,000 to 6,000 that are active, that have depositors. Our total iLottery, people who've created accounts, is over 80,000. But actual active play is much smaller than that.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is iLottery 5% of the lottery, 1% of the lottery, 5% of the lottery?
Okay, that
30%?
would be roughly, hold on, I have that. Bear with me.
We got plenty of time.
So our iLottery play roughly represents 13%
Of the lottery play.
of lotteries overall
And what is
revenue.
And you may not have it right at the moment, but is that 5 years ago, would it have been lower, higher, the same?
It's roughly, it's slightly growing. It actually was stagnant last year. It remained relatively level, but we're seeing growth now here in fiscal year 26.
Okay. And then I guess last on this topic of well, the parties at fault, including those that should have properly certified, be the ones paying for the promotions and the steps taken by OLG or some portion of that?
Are you going back to the issue?
Yeah.
Okay. We're still in the process of remediating that, and we don't have a price tag yet on what the cost will be. We have an estimation in our minds of where it could end up, But yes, my goal would be to talk to the vendors involved and make sure that they're held responsible and that they make us whole at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, my expectation is that that would be the
Yeah.
case, and I would think that that would be the expectation of the, like I said,
Yes, sir.
we pay for this service and we pay
Absolutely.
for it for a reason. Okay. Back to the lottery more generally, there had been an RFP, there had been a process to bring on a new operator. In the end, the contract was supposed to come to the council for approval. I think the idea was we might see it in June. And it was actually a process that was, all of these things have controversy, but it was a process that also had controversy. But we came to understand recently that the RFP was canceled because there was no contract that ultimately came out of it. What can you tell us about where OLG is in the process of issuing a new RFP, and to what extent can you tell us, give us insight into what happened?
Okay. The contract for our central gaming system, our ticket printing, and our iLottery system went through the RFP process. And in the end, there was only one remaining viable bidder, and that it did not result in a contract. That bidder opted not to sign the contract at the time. So that resulted in a cancellation of the RFP. We are in the process now of making adjustments and changes to our RFP to reissue it. Our goal is to have that back to the Office of Contracts and in process as early as the end of this week. We think we've identified areas that may have caused vendors concern, some of the requirements that are in it. Please understand that that RFP had been in process for a great deal of time. I'm only in my first year here in my position, so I had no hands on the RFP when it was first created and delivered. I do know that my team exhaustively went over that contract and put a lot of things into it that they felt would make it best for the District of Columbia. But for whatever reason, it did not result in an award happening. So we are not going back to the drawing board. We are making some changes based on what we've learned, the economy, how things are right now in the industry, technology that has changed over the course of the last 1 or 2 years. We'll make those additions and changes to the RFP, and hopefully we will be able to have more people bid on the next contract and hopefully get that process. But in the meantime, we are in a position where we are going to have to work toward a renewal of the current contract with the current vendor for another year. And that could likely lead into another year because of any conversion process. When the RFP is awarded, could take a significant amount of time. Fortunately, we still have 3 one-year renewals remaining on the current contract.
Okay, so I want to try to make sure that I understand the dynamics, and I may put a few words in your mouth and then you can tell me if I've been accurate or not. And it sounds like we developed an RFP some time ago, maybe in a different economic environment, and in a world of changing technologies. And that RFP ended up having just one qualifying bidder. And then once you pick that qualified bidder, I suppose that there are limitations on how much you can vary off of what was in the RFP. And that bidder who qualified ultimately determined that they weren't willing to sign the contract based on the terms that had been set in the RFP some number of years ago. Does that capture it?
I can't speak on behalf of the bidder. I do not know. I just know that the RFP had a great number of requirements that may have deterred someone from that. So there's information that goes back and forth through that process with the Office of Contracts. And there's a moment where the vendors have a chance to ask questions. And based on the questions that the vendors asked, I think it's fair to say that we can recognize what the pain points were for prospective vendors. And this is an opportunity to improve our RFP.
Okay. And there's questions, I guess part of what I'm getting at, and the reason that I'm getting at this is an RFP, we'll see an RFP at some point, and this has been an area around which there has been a lot of controversy over time. And so we're going to want to dial into that RFP. And on the one hand, we're going to want to see an RFP that is responsive to the needs of the operator. And on the other hand, we're going to want to see an RFP that fully protects and advances the district's interest. And it sounds like what you were saying is in the last one, a lot of people put in a lot of work to protect the district's interest. And some of that might have made it more difficult for the operator to ultimately sign on. We want to get the balance right, but we want to get the balance right. Like we don't want an RFP that is too friendly to the operator to the detriment of the district. So I want to have eyes on this as we move forward. But you turned on your microphone, so I'll give you a chance to.
I agree with your assessment 100%.
Okay. And so then you say we have 3 one-year options. What did you say when you think we might see the proposed RFP?
The new one for the whole system or for the renewal with our current operator?
Well, why don't you answer both?
Okay.
But I was talking about the new one. But
Yes,
you're
our
right that-
current contract expires on July 15th. So that process needs to happen soon. And we've been in contact with the current gaming system vendor, and they understand, and they're in the process of putting the paperwork forward that they need to in order to get the renewal to council. In addition to that, my goal is to have a revised RFP ready to send to the Office of Contracts to restart the process by the end of this week.
The end of this week.
This week.
Okay. Do we get visibility into that RFP here on the council?
I do not believe so, not until it goes through all the processes, but Ridgely, can you?
Council is not involved in that process. It's drafted by the agency and our Office of Contracts, and it's issued and becomes a public document once it's issued.
So we will not have an opportunity to have an impact on that RFP document.
Traditionally not. Clearly, we're subject to the laws that you pass, and any RFP has to conform to those laws. But the details about what goes into an RFP is usually done at the agency level.
So it goes to you're now working on a renewal with the existing operator. That renewal will come to the council, and the council will have to approve or not.
Correct.
And so what would happen if that renewal came to the council and we didn't approve?
Then lottery would have a major problem.
Okay. And then a similar thing is you have an RFP for the big new major RFP, and you could go through that process and result in a contract that came to the council. And if the council didn't approve, we'd be in a heap of trouble again, right?
It would put us in a difficult position. Yes, sir.
So
I would like to say, because these contracts and these RFPs are very standard among different jurisdictions. I can assure you that the district isn't doing something that's so unique that it would be different than what you would see from Virginia or from Maryland, who's having their own issues with their RFP. But they're very standardized.
I hear you. I just want to stay together because I want to have some level of transparency between the it's going to eventually come to us, and these things are always controversial.
Correct.
There's a lot of money on the table, and there are folks who, so they're always controversial.
I've been in the lottery industry for 32 years in different jurisdictions. They're always controversial wherever you are.
So you want us to be braced for what it is that you're doing and why it is that you're doing it. Maybe that there's not a lot of variation amongst them, but I think it's important that we find a way to stay to keep us informed so that we minimize the chance. You can't eliminate the chance of controversy, but to the extent that there's transparency along the way, we can minimize it. I think
it's a very transparent process. It's all subject to the Procurement Practices Reform Act. It's, all the documents when we issue them are made public. So it's a very public process, the whole procurement process.
Well, yeah, I hear you, except for the RFP itself is created internally by the administration. And I'm really not trying to create a problem here. I'm trying to avoid a problem.
Understood.
But part of what I'm hearing is that embedded in the last RFP might have been challenges that resulted in not closing it, and there's other different controversies. So
Right.
The creation of the RFP, too many cooks doesn't work.
Well,
So I get that, but transparency can help.
I agree 100%. And one of the reasons why we try to stick to the standard RFP terms that other jurisdictions use is to avoid some of the conflict, because everybody's using the same types of terms. I will tell you, many years ago, I was reviewing a proposal when I was in Texas, and we had to go back to the vendor and say, are you proposing the same things in Texas that you proposed to Virginia? Because Virginia was listed throughout the RFP. Their proposal. They're very similar.
Yeah. Okay. Well, more to follow. I mean, in the last RFP, there was a protest. Is that a thing you anticipate again in this setting?
Protests are common in the lottery industry. We try to account for those. As I mentioned, Maryland is going through its own process with the same vendors and protests and lawsuits. In this case, it was after one vendor became disqualified and they protested the disqualification. But anybody can file a protest. Rarely do the vendors win.
I hear you. All goes back to what I was saying is these things don't happen quietly. So let's try to stick together and make sure that the committee understands as fully as possible what's happening, what drove decisions, so that we are in the best position possible to advance a process that's positive.
Fully understood.
So now, recognizing that the contracting process is filled with different kinds of headaches, and that they are inevitable in this world or common in this world, once the contract is awarded,
Yes. What's
the process look like then?
The conversion process, you have if the vendor changes, there has to be cooperation between the current contracted vendor and the incoming contractor to work on system integrations that might need to happen in the short term while the new system is built out. What further complicates our situation is in our RFP process, we have combined the iLottery with our traditional lottery at the same time. So if integrations need to happen. There's timing that's involved. Equipment is updated throughout the district. The back end system is updated. So there's hardware and software changes that happen. You have an ICS vendor that is separate that checks all the systems to make sure that they work. So this takes months and months to do. To the chair's point earlier, I think one of the things that may have been a deterrent was the requirement on the timing in the process that was asked. So that's something that I'm reviewing now, how quickly to market that can happen when you're dealing with the different entities that are involved. So it could be a 12-month or a 13 or 14-month process with depending on what we ask for. And when you put those mandatory requirements on the contractors, you know, they expect to meet it and try to get there. And if your timing is, your requirement is too short, that could definitely be a deterrent to a company wanting to bid because they feel like they can't meet the timing. So there's a lot that goes into this, whether it's the amount of the terminals, the vending machines that are involved, the cashless devices that are used. It's something that affects every player and their experience as well. We have a lot of older equipment right now because we've had the same vendor for a number of periods. We're in a renewal period on an older contract. Gaming technology changes rapidly. And if you don't build in updates in your contracts, you can get dated machines and software that cause a problem. DC is a small lottery. This is another challenge that I've noticed coming from the outside in. We are not a large lottery in a large state with a huge population. Maybe some of the things that we've put out there in our RFP in the past are things that you would expect to see in a larger jurisdiction where revenues are quite different. So those are things to consider. I think it's important that, as to your point earlier, which I agree with 100%, you want to protect. First priority is your district. Make sure that it does what it's supposed to do, generates the revenue we want for our government to go to our people. But at the same time, these businesses need to be able to make money too, or they're not going to be interested in doing business with us. So there is a fine line that you toe to find that right point. I think we're zeroed in on it, and I think the new RFP, once it is released, will meet everything that we need it to hopefully get all three of the major gaming system vendors to bid on it. That would be my goal. That way we get the best price possible at the end of the day.
Okay, so the you suggested could take 14 months to do the transition.
That is just based on my experience with conversions. There are conversions going on right now across the country, several other jurisdictions, and there's been delays in at least one of them that I know of that have been significant. So I'm taking that to account. I also understand that the three major gaming vendors that do this kind of work have conversions happening in other jurisdictions at the same time. We're not in a bubble where we're the only one that matters.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about their schedules too, and they have finite engineering resources.
No, I hear you, and I'm not trying to pin you down to a number. I'm
Right.
just trying to think about a big picture, which is 3 1-year renewals, 36 months, 14 months of transition down to 22 months, RFP that could go out sometime soon. It's not tight yet, but it could get tight.
I have a great sense of urgency, Mr. Chair. I do.
I mean, how long to the so say an RFP went out in May, what's the typical response time for an RFP like that?
Can you
So
elaborate?
I don't want to get too much into the details about an RFP process because it's still being developed, including things like timing, but I will tell you the process is we know when we have to have a conversion done by, and we start working backwards from there. We work with the Office of Contracts to put together the schedule for the RFP because you want to give vendors sufficient time to submit proposals. And in the district, you also want to give vendors sufficient time to put together their CBE plans, which are different than what they do in other jurisdictions. So, you know, we don't want to get into the details about what the timing will be because it has not been developed yet, but we most certainly work from the date that we know we have to have the new system up and operating to make sure that the documents are all done. The procurement process is done in accordance with that.
So I hear you, and I won't try to pin you down any more than that. I will say that just thinking about the complexity of responses to this kind of a RFP, thinking about the complexity of the time to analyze the responses to this kind of RFP, and then what is required to pin down and reflect it in a contract that then would come to the council, and thinking that 3 years of renewals, 14 months-ish for conversion. I appreciate your sense of urgency. On the renewal, when would you expect us to see something about the renewal of the exercise of the 1 year option for renewal of the existing contract? Is that something that would come to the council?
So that is something that does go to the council, like all contracts is over $1 million. So it will go to the council. Our Office of Contracts is working with the vendor to pull together all the documentation needed for the contract package. And as soon as that is ready and it's being worked on diligently, it will be presented to the council.
And when does the existing contract expire?
July 15th, the 14th it expires because it started on the 15th.
Okay, well, that just gave me heartburn.
It's being worked on as rapidly as it possible.
Because we go on recess on July 15th.
You understand?
And so then this is a contract that would come to us for passive
It's
approval.
a passive review contract. We have the dates counted backwards, so we are well aware of the dates. Yes.
All right, and we will be watching those dates also. I don't think you can submit it after July 15th when we're on recess.
No, we will get it in well before then. We're talking much sooner than that, than later. We are working on it as fast as we can, and we have the dates counted out. We know exactly when it.
Okay, let's stay together on all of this so we can get let's have this happen as smoothly as it has ever happened anywhere.
That would be very nice.
I would like that very much.
Okay. The mayor's fiscal year 2027 proposed budget cuts OLG's operating budget by 18.4%. You spoke a little bit about this in your testimony, equaling 50 million in spending authority. Can you explain where OLG will feel this decrease in the operating budget authority? Is it mostly surrounding the operation of the games, or will there be operational impact on the agency itself?
We've had a broad range of cuts that have occurred, and mainly, again, the vast majority of this stems from the restructuring that occurred from the Sports Wagering Amendment Act of 2024, which created the commercial aspect and took the internal operation of sports wagering away from OLG. So a lot of it is structural. We've had impacts that are across the board as far as personnel assignment, some of the operations that we do internally, and in our funding. The biggest challenge that has come from this scale down is the fact that revenue no longer flows through the lottery fund. So we have no way of gaining revenue to pay for positions that are associated with certain forms of gaming. in this fact, the commercial game, other than their license fees. And what we had at last year, we expected to get about 2.5 million in license fees. We're now down to 500,000 in license fees this year. So where does that other 2 million come from? We've had to take from our traditional lottery. The other aspect that is impacting us is the district has added games of skill in recent years. The games of skill operators that are in the district and the retailers are small in number at this point. And those machines are only taxed at 10%, and they're generating only 128,000 in tax revenue per year. And we're not receiving much from that in terms of licensing. So as new operators come in that gaming area, we will also need to look at how we can address potential revenue from that toward having positions necessary to see growth that may occur in the games of skill area. But overall, those are the biggest challenges that face us with the restructuring, with the drawdown. But as an enterprise fund, I think it's important for everyone to understand that money doesn't automatically happen. We may be allowed to spend 222 million on the books, but if we don't generate 222 million in revenue, then that money's not there. We can only live on what we generate.
So hear you. I mean, I think, and correct me if my understanding's wrong, but that a big chunk of that 18.4% reduction is just something being moved from one place to the other. The thing where it has traction, negative traction for you, is that by moving a bunch of money to a different place, that money had generated funding that supported agency operations to the tune of around $2 million. And
Yeah.
that's gone too.
Yeah. And it's closer to 1.5.
So that's the real sting from
Yes, sir.
that. Then you have this other phenomenon of the games of skill that must be an administrative burden, but not generating much for the
Correct.
agency, creating another pressure on the agency.
And also, we have commercial bingo law now on the books. Even though we do not have anyone offering commercial bingo yet, it's still a possibility. And then what would be necessary for the startup and function of that? We were given 2 full-time FTEs, which we have not filled for that because there's no need to without having a commercial bingo operation. But in the future, if that does occur, there will be added costs to the regulation and oversight to make sure that we do those things right.
Okay. The February revenue estimate projected the lottery's transfer for FY26 would be just over $30 million. That's back in February, and now here we are 3 months later. I don't know, March, April, 2 months later. Do you feel that projection is still reasonable? Are we on a pace to do that? I think in other
Yes, sir.
years,
I feel like we are on pace to meet our obligations.
And then in FY25, the September revenue estimate projected a transfer of 28 million, which you ultimately exceeded, transferring 32.5 million. So that would have been for FY25, and that 30, if I'm understanding it correctly, that $28 million estimate comes at the end of the fiscal year, and then yet there's a correction of 4.5 million, an upward correction of 4.5 million through the reconciliation process running up to the ACFR, I suppose. Is there something structural that you are conservative and that the prospect of upward adjustments even as late as that is a likelihood? Why did that happen? And can I hope for it next year?
I would hope so. Alex, would you like to answer this one?
Sure, Alex Aporgi, Agency Fiscal Officer. So, again, we were not involved in the forecasting of that 28 million in FY 2025. But I would imagine that that conservative forecasting was again part of the realization of the Sports Wagering Amendment Act of 2024. So when we forecasted it just over 30 million for 2026, and roughly the same thing for 2027, we did look at how we're trending expense-wise and revenue-wise, and that's a number we're much more comfortable with. But we can't speak to exceeding our 2026 or 2027 goals by that same difference, because right now the numbers is just not showing it.
I see. So part of it is a conservatism in FY 25 that was built in because there's a new entrant, a significant change in the marketplace, and
I would imagine, correct.
naturally be. But then FY 26, you're internalizing what the experience is. FY
Correct.
27, you're internalizing. In the proposed FY 27 budget, the revenue estimates show a decline of $250,000 a year annually. Why? Why would you expect a decline in revenue over time?
Well, in building out the forecasts for the financial plan of the transfer for the lottery, we factored in several things, right? We look at macroeconomic conditions, and we just looked at kind of how the transfer was going. So we started at 39 at one point, we're at 32 last year, we're slated for 30 for this year. So it would make sense that, you know, that trend kind of continues over the course of the out years. It wouldn't make sense for us to be kind of on a downward trend and all of a sudden have an upward trend with no empirical evidence that would support that.
So it's not a specific thing. Although I suppose if iGaming were to come into place, would that then result? Would that
potentially? Yes. So that the forecast you're looking at, that was submitted before this iGaming came out. So with this one coming out, now we kind of have to go back and look and see what it might be in the future.
What impact that might have?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So during OLG's performance oversight hearing, we heard a concern about a $2 million funding gap. You might have just described it as 1.5, although you might with the games of skill piece, maybe that pushes it up a little bit higher, but on the order of a $2 million funding gap within the agency, impacting your ability to ensure rigorous oversight. And I think you'd probably be pretty forceful that you think you're doing rigorous oversight, but
yes, sir,
with stretched resources. To what extent, if there's a gap, to what extent is that about a shortage of staff to oversee sports wagering? What's missing because of that $2 million funding gap?
Right now, we have a number of employees that are wearing multiple hats in our security and oversight division. We have investigators that will work traditional lottery, but we also have investigators that will pay visits to game of skill locations. They will also help with audits and activities involving the in-person sports wagering operations. And then we also have people that audit across the board. When I'm looking at the laws and how they have been implemented in the district, you know, I always look at to see if there's a funding mechanism for responsible gaming and problem gambling. I look to see if, you know, there's a mechanism for the regulatory oversight to occur. Not all of our laws do. And that's something that concerns me. Some of them do, some of them don't. I would like to hopefully see in the future that whenever we look at gambling related bills of any kind, that it contain a funding mechanism for proper oversight and regulation. Right now, for instance, how we track our sports wagering folks that are on the exclusion list is a very manual process database. How we track our licensing is rather antiquated. I would love to have updated software and technology in place. However, we're so focused on making sure we meet our transfer amount. I'm concerned about taking money from the traditional lottery to pay for some of these things. I'm coming from a jurisdiction where all the different gaming lines contribute to that operational cost, and that's just not how our current setup is. So that gives me some concern. I don't want us to be in a position where my sports wagering investigators or my games of skill investigators don't have the ability to go out and do something that they need to do. And right now, that's not the case. We have made it work with what we have. But if that funding were there, I would feel much better about our revenue estimate on our transfer. Because please remember, last year, our transfer was 32.5 million, but the District of Columbia received over 51 million in gaming revenue, which was the highest amount of revenue our district has received from gaming since 2017. That's significant. And that was because of the amendment. So the amendment worked. It did create more revenue to the district, but I think an unforeseen consequence was, oh, wait, we missed this little piece. They need to be funded as a regulator on an annual basis, not just once every 5 years. So, and we have seen the reduction of the Class B operators. So that revenue that was coming in from licenses from those types of operators has dwindled as well.
So I hear you. There's a decent amount to unpack in all of that. And one of the things is I actually don't want you to, this is me, think of the transfer amount. I wouldn't want you to, I'm not saying you have. I think you're worried about the possibility of needing to, but I wouldn't want you to compromise your ability to regulate in order to ensure that you hit a mark for transfer. Because so just put that out there to the extent that
I appreciate that.
and then and my team put together, this is a graph of the transfers, and it starts over in 2009 and then comes over here at around 70, and then you get to 2025 and it's closer to 30. And so it's a big,
Yes.
You pointed to 2017, before 2017 for a period of higher, but then what I'm hearing you say is, when I look at this graph, in 2024, it was 40 million. Maybe 10 of that came from sports wagering. I don't know. Then sports wagering comes out of this graph.
Correct.
But is the missing piece here.
That is a missing piece.
That brings it to 50, still significantly below the 70 from when it launched. And also, I don't know if you saw me playing with my phone. I was trying to think about, well, what is $70 million in 2009 in today's dollars? And I think it's about 50% higher. So it's like 105 million. And so where we are now, we're at half the level of transfers, real value of transfers to the district from where we were when lottery was first launched. It is what it is. I'm not trying to maximize. Go ahead.
If I may, there have been a myriad of things that have occurred that have impacted that. I think looking at that graph, which is a very good representation of what's happened, the pandemic was a major factor. I don't think Washington, D.C.'s foot traffic has returned to the normal that it was. the number of lottery retailers has shrunk significantly. We are now down to 333 retailers in the district. We've also had outside competition occur. You've had casinos that have been built in that time frame. One on our doorstep right across the river that it makes an impact on revenue here in the city. I hear from our retailers constantly, a lot of them are tobacco shops. They were hurt by the flavored cigarette legislation that occurred. There's a number of things that have reduced the foot traffic, and that has definitely taken a toll, no doubt. But competition, the amount of people in the city, the federal job layoffs recently in the last year, that has impacted us in a negative fashion. When I've gone out and I've talked to our retailers and what their struggles are, a lot of it revolves around reduced foot traffic in the town. Remote work has also occurred during that period, and that has had a substantial impact. The launch of other types of entertainment and gaming, not just the regulated ones that you see in Virginia and Maryland, but fantasy sports, other things that have occurred during that time, that has all impacted the people's wallets and where they choose to spend their money. So yes, when I talk about cannibalization occurring, that is a great chart to show how some of that can take impact. But sports wagering cannibalizes your lottery to a degree. Games of skill cannibalizes your lottery to a degree. Casinos in surrounding states cannibalizes. So there are impacts. And those are things that we need to be aware of as a government moving forward too.
So, and we have talked about this before. In a certain sense, that there is the regulated pie and there is the unregulated pie, and there is competition inside of the regulated pie where there are different things, more options out there for people. So lottery would decline as people use their entertainment or gambling dollars in a different space. And there's the unregulated pie that is out there that's competing with the regulated pie. I'm not trying to increase overall the pie. I don't want to be in the business of encouraging people to gamble. On the other hand, where it's happening, regulating it strikes me as important. And different folks have talked about, and this is going to be more appropriate in the afternoon, but different folks have talked about, well, district residents are spending X number of dollars outside of the district on gambling or gaming kinds of entertainment, or in unregulated markets on that. And we should regulate it and capture those dollars. Do you have estimates of how many district dollars are being spent in other ways, either in an unregulated market or outside of the district?
I only know of studies that have been done by outside groups, like the American Gaming Association, where they estimate, the illegal gaming industry to be well over $1 billion, things like that. But I do know this. I use the metro and I travel around town a lot. I know that when you go to National Harbor, you see a lot of district license plates in the parking lot at that casino. I know that when you visit other facilities, you see district license plates there. I don't want to get into how many hundreds of millions it may be, tens of millions, Mr. Chair, because I can't give you a good number. I don't think anyone has an accurate number. They're just estimates based on what is known. I just do know that the area that we're in, there's a great deal of competition. We have two giant lotteries on both sides of us in Virginia and Maryland that are very large and robust, and they generate a great deal of revenue for their states. I know that we're small. We sit within the confines of our little diamond, and we have areas of the city that are the federal enclave where we have no gambling activity occurring at all. But I do know this, that people do spend their money and they do play games and they enjoy it. And I think it's important that you have a strong regulated market. And I feel good that we do that here in DC. We regulate all of our legal gaming. But I know that my team has identified more than 20 entities that are not licensed, that operate in a gray area online, in online sweepstakes, casinos, whatever you want to call them, that people play. I have these ads sent to my phone on a daily basis. And if I'm getting them living in the Navy Yard, I'm sure everyone else is too. And it's aggravating, actually, because those that are regulated gaming entities, they pay taxes here. They create jobs here. They contribute to the public good in how we tax them and control them and license them. No public good comes from the untaxed, unregulated.
Okay. Going back to sort of pressures on the agency, and you feel like you're able to do what you need to do, but you're concerned about the pressures and demands on the agency. On the one, do you want to hire additional staff? Or, I mean, one of the things that we've noted is, I think on your Schedule A, there are 10 vacancies in the agency. There's also the possibility of reprogramming those positions to accommodate the need for additional oversight of the operators. How are you thinking about, have you considered reprogramming the vacant positions for this role? Are you thinking about, do you have a wish list of trying to hire more folks? If you had a wish list to try to hire more folks, why wouldn't you reprogram those positions? So talk to me about what you're feeling about the need for staff and the existence of the 10 vacant positions.
Okay. Right now, we have those 10 vacant positions that you're talking about. We've already heard this morning from public testimony, historical horse racing, which is a new concept to my ears, because we've not had any discussions with those folks. But I do know what goes around that and possibilities. We just passed commercial bingo legislation that authorized us to have 2 new positions that I have held on to out of caution. I'm not going to hire someone when they don't have a job to do. When a commercial bingo operator does come to the district and sets up, then we may need to do that. But I'm confident that we have what we need right now to get by. iGaming, the potential for that, what could go into that? That allows us to retool some of the people we already have on staff. But there may be additional needs that come with that. So yes, I have thought about repurposing, but I also know things are changing rapidly. And in the matter of a year or two, depending on how council and the executive feel and where they want to go, I need to be ready to potentially repurpose some of those positions. So yes, that is one reason why some of them are still open. But there are others that I feel like we can close out here soon if we don't need them.
Okay, so interesting. So you feel like you're good. You're worried about the future demands on
I'm
your
worried about
team.
future demands.
You have an insurance policy in the form of some of these vacant positions. You don't want to let go of that insurance policy at this point. If the demands that you fear don't come forward, then maybe you could see letting go some of that insurance policy. But for now, in this dynamic environment, you want to have the comfort of
I would
those
like to have
positions.
some flexibility. Yes, sir.
And that if you take a position away, it's not that you just take it away for 1 year, you take it away and it's gone and you have
It's
to
gone
start
forever.
over. Yeah. Okay. But, and then,
But please realize when those go unfilled, that money that would have been for that goes into the transfer back to the district if we make it, if we generate revenue that would even fund it. That is my whole crux of my first year here is we have to make sure everything pays for itself.
so interesting. So the idea is if you could fill the positions and lower the transfer, so your
I'm
decision.
not going to do that.
Well, I don't want you never to do that. I mean, I want you, if you feel like I need this in order to do proper oversight, I want
We
you to
have
do
that.
it.
I feel good about where we are oversight right now.
Okay.
I have no problems with where we are with our team as far as regulation right now. I'm just sounding the alarm that I want to make sure it stays that way, and proper funding needs to be thought about when we craft these bills in the future if it affects gaming.
And I mean, you're very scrupulous about the way in which you approach this work, so very appreciative of it. I really don't want the transfer to be sacrosanct, and I don't think that you're treating it as sacrosanct. I mean, it is, the idea is responsibly maximize. And so both of those words, and actually the responsibly is the one that I would put the most weight on as opposed to the maximize. I want the revenue, but I definitely want it done responsibly. And responsibly partly goes to not encouraging behaviors that are going to be destructive or doing things that protect against destructive behaviors. But it's also very effectively providing oversight to these operations. So I don't want you to scrimp on that.
No, absolutely not. We are aligned in that thinking, Mr. Chair. I'm a public servant, but at the end of the day, our lottery exists to make revenue for the people of the district. And that's something I hold dear to my heart. So the transfer does matter because that's what council can use to make a difference in our city. So every one of my employees knows this from day one with me. How do we do this the right way and maximize that revenue so that public good comes from it? Absolutely.
Okay. Do you feel the need for additional oversight or do you feel like the need for additional oversight or the need for oversight in the sports wagering space is increasing?
It's actually staying the same. I wouldn't say that it's increasing. Peter, would you disagree with that? Or
Peter Alvarado, Director of Regulation Oversight. I don't see it right now necessarily increasing unless we get additional operators. So on the sports wagering side, I think it's sort of evened out, but it does keep us quite busy.
So is the suggestion there, sports wagering got introduced, it ramped up, and is it plateauing or is it continuing to grow the sports wagering space?
In terms of from a regulatory standpoint?
No, in terms of the revenue from it, the amount.
Oh, the revenue from it. No, the revenue seems to it's still continuing to go up. Yeah.
But from a regulatory perspective, you have a fixed number of operators, you have people who are watching them. So that's not changing from a regulatory perspective.
Correct. From a regulatory standpoint right now, it's been pretty stable in terms of the number of operators that we've had for the last year. And so it's evened out. And then it's not only the operators, but it's the chain of suppliers that come behind them and the occupational licensees. That all seems to have now, over the last year, have flattened out. If we get a change and, there are inquiries about other operators coming in sometimes, If that changes, then, you know,
That
that'll
could
go up.
change. Yeah. And is there any kind of sense of how much of the activity in the sports wagering space is by district residents as opposed to tourists and visitors to the district? This is one of the things that people talked about when it was in front of us a year or so back, was that there are folks who do this when they're, you know, they live in Chicago and they do sports wagering, but they happen to be in the district. They'd like to do sports wagering. They couldn't because it wasn't available here in the district. And now it becomes available again. Do we have any kind of sense of how much of the usage is district resident based and how much of it is visitor based?
We do. If you give me a moment, I can get you that.
Okay. And so then back to the vacancies and the way in which you're managing it. If something happened where we had a new entrant into the sports wagering world and you felt like you had a need for more oversight capacity there, then that might be a time when you could draw on one of these vacancies, reprogram it and use it in this way.
Yes, sir. I'm more thinking along the lines of commercial bingo. There has been an entity reach out that's interested in a potential facility here in the city. If that were to occur, that would require manpower that would go out to that facility. I'm also concerned about games of skill growing. Right now, we have a new distributor entering the marketplace. The potential to see growth there is significant. It's my understanding there's roughly more than 30 bars, taverns, and restaurants that have games of skill in them right now in the city. There could be a significant increase in that number happening soon. And I need to make sure I have the proper amount of auditors and investigators to visit these locations to make sure that everything's going properly there. Right now, when you look at the landscape of the city and the gaming options that are available, that is one area that could grow significantly. I know that there's in the neighborhood of 2,500 to 3,000 restaurants and bars in the city. They're limited right now to just where they have alcoholic beverage pouring permits. And there's still plenty of room to growth for that to happen. So as those machines propagate, we may need to add staff. And right now we don't have proper revenue coming from that because it's so small to fund positions. But in the future, that would be something we would need there.
But in terms of, to the extent that I'm thinking about your 10 vacancies, and maybe there are other places in your budget that are like this as kind of an accordion that gives you the ability to bring folks on to address different
Yes.
things. That's a resource, the 10 vacancies. And are there other resources that you can turn to inside of the agency in order?
Alex, do we have anything like that? I think that's
Not as
pretty
much
much
as
the only
we'd
one.
like, to be honest. Our budget as it is fairly skinny. Like, we're down to essential contracts only. So we don't have too much wiggle room to potentially repurpose for any unforeseen need.
But as an enterprise, we do have the risks and concerns that come with potential for pandemics, recessions, anything that may hit us. We don't really have reserves that we can use to get through a tough time if that were to happen.
Okay. So I'm thinking about those 10 vacancies as your cushion. Okay, I'm gonna move to another topic.
If I could interject just for a moment, just to answer your previous question.
Please do.
Based on data that we requested from the sports wagering operators last August, we asked them for their player data and we took a look at residency and all that. So of that, 45% of their players, of the operators here, were district residents. So it's about 45%. We're gonna ask them next couple of weeks for an updated list to see if that's grown. But as of August of last year, it was 45%.
So the majority are not district residents.
A lot of Virginia and Maryland.
Okay. That was about the most effective advertisement word. Anyways, thank you. Okay. Speaking of advertisements, and we've had back and forth on this. This is a thing that I have a decent amount of ambivalence about. And I said it before, that where there's an unregulated market or a thing is happening, then let's regulate it. But do I want to expand the pie of people gambling? I'm reluctant to be in that place for the sake of getting funding for the district. There's lots of ways to get funding for the district, and you don't want to, you want to be targeting the right people to, that's a bigger philosophical thing, but advertising, the mayor's proposed FY27 budget authorizes OLG to spend up to $9 million on advertising. Can you provide a breakdown of the products or type of advertising your budget goes towards? And what I was trying to set up before is, I'm queasy about advertising. I'm not trying to encourage more people. $9 million in order to encourage people to engage, as opposed to having it out there as an option. So how's it work? How do you think about your advertising?
Well, first, I respect your beliefs on that very much. We actually spend closer to 7 million. That's what we spent last year on advertising, and our advertising involves a myriad of things. It could be local promotions. We have a sponsorship, for instance, with the Go-Go Museum. It could be in team sponsorships. We have contracts with the Washington Nationals, Monumental Sports, DC United, and the Washington Commanders, where we sometimes do tickets. For instance, we even have a contract where we do an instant ticket that is themed with the NFL team, the Commanders, that is very popular. So that's included in that. Almost all of that money is CBE spend. Our agency of record is Teote Creative, based here in Washington. A lot of it is signage, jackpot alerts, radio spins, website deals, evergreen marketing campaigns, a television commercial. We shot one this year that is a multi-purpose commercial where we can add in at the end instant tickets or draw game promotions we might be doing for a period of time. We really don't do a lot of broadcast commercials anymore. We focus mainly on streaming and alternative areas. But there's some spend with Metro where we did some bus wraps. It's pretty all encompassing, our marketing, but whenever we do market, whether it's signage, billboard type, online, promotions that we do, we always have a responsible gaming message with it and that tag on everything. And that's something that we also require of all of our licensees in the different gaming lines too. But it's wide ranging.
And the advertising contract, is it competitively bid?
Yes, sir.
And when does the current contract expire?
It's actually in the process of being, I think the contract's out now for bid process.
So
for marketing.
Is there an RFP out on the
Yes,
street?
sir. Yes, sir.
And what percentage of your advertising budget goes to responsible gaming, promotion of responsible gaming?
we do a lot of gifts in kind and trade out over some of our RG messaging. We spend roughly 29,000 a year with the National Council on Problem Gambling to run our RG hotline for the district. We have one full-time employee that is dedicated to RG, and we do RG training of all of our staff. But out of the marketing budget, every item that we do has a responsible gaming message, like the 1-800 number posted on it. Our tickets and so forth do as well. But I can't really pull that out and say percentage wise what it is in a fair way.
Okay. And you said it's authorization to spend 9 million, but you spend more like 7 million.
Yes, sir.
And that 7 million, I'm gonna garble the pronunciation.
Teote Creative Services. Yes, sir.
How much of that 7 million?
Almost all of it.
Almost all of it
goes through them. Yes.
And the RFP that's on the street, does it have a dollar amount associated with it? The RFP, you have an RFP for?
Oh, it's actually much higher. The contract allows for, I believe, 14 million. But we never spend anywhere near that. We've managed the year over year, it's been closer to 9 million in actual spend. And then when I arrived last year, we narrowed it down to 7 million.
I see. And you mentioned the bus wraps.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, just this weekend, my wife and I were out and a bus came by. And
was it a commander's ticket?
It wasn't it wasn't a command. It was a very happy woman with confetti falling, I think.
Okay.
And my wife also wondered aloud, like, anyways, so when did OLG begin advertising during sporting events in the district?
That's been a number of years predating me. Probably from the beginning, I would imagine.
It predates me. It ebbs and flows. I think at one point in time, we didn't do much with the commanders when their name wasn't appropriate. But it's ebbed and flowed for the 20 years that I've been here.
And what does it mean? What is it that you're doing when you're doing that?
Well, when you're talking about our professional sports teams, you get a lot of visitors to the city that attend those games. You also have people that go to those games that obviously have disposable income. Tickets are expensive to go to some of these sporting events. So you're marketing to people who obviously have entertainment dollars and the ability to potentially play your games as an option.
But is it like something that shows on the screen? Is it what
Yeah.
is it? What does it mean?
Sometimes we sometimes have in-venue promotions like a lucky fan of the game, where you may have like a giveaway bag of lottery promotional items or team promotional items that are sponsored by the lottery. So they might randomly pick a fan out of the crowd, and then that's like a video board moment. But a lot of times it's signage that'll say DC Lottery or go online to play at dcilottery.com, or you may see a sign that promotes one of our products like Powerball or Mega Millions.
And so it's as much, here are people who use their disposable income for entertainment, and you get in front of them at these sporting events.
Top of mind awareness. Yes. For people who are 18 and older, that's our target.
And the advertising budget over time, how long before your arrival was it around 9 million?
I know the last 2 years prior to my arrival seemed to be around 9 million. Alex, do you have more insight prior to that?
No, I did an analysis going all the way back to, let me see. I went back a couple of fiscal years. at least as of 2023, we're still around the 9.7 million. So it's kind of been around maybe 10-ish, then 9.79, then down to 7.
Our general counsel just made me realize something too. When they had Gambit DC and launched sports wagering, it increased at that point. So that would make sense because they were promoting the sports wagering app and the platforms and all of that went into it.
So you could see a blip in the amount of
There's
advertising.
probably that. Yeah.
So probably, over a more extended period of time, staying in the 9 million area.
Yes.
What about, do you receive any funding from the national lotteries, Live Powerball, to do advertising for them here in the district?
No, that's not how the muscle agreements work. There is promotional accounts that the national group has with Powerball, and they will do sponsorships and things at times, but that's not related to our budget.
Okay. And back on the sporting events briefly, have you tried to do any kind of studies to see whether or not there are increases in use of the lottery in the wake of these major sporting events? How do you test the efficacy of your advertising?
We do look at ROI on our events. I can get those to you. We have reviewed all of that with our contracts in recent years.
And it's a little bit cheating, this chart, because the bottom is 35, and so it looks even, the scale looks a little worse than it is. But when it does, if we're spending $9 million a year in promotion, in advertising, the best it could have achieved is staunching the bleeding, right? I mean, it hasn't increased use of the products. It's may have slowed the decline. You reached for your microphone, so I'll give you the chance.
Potentially, it has stopped even more severe decline from occurring. But like I said, there has been a proliferation of gaming options in the last decade. You see it across jurisdictions. You see declines occurring in traditional lottery play across the country, in instant tickets, for instance, with the addition of iGaming, iLotteries, games of skill, video lottery terminals, historical horse racing, you name it, prediction markets, sweepstakes, casual fun play games that are social, that have nothing to do with anything other than you go play a game and you have in-app purchases for improving your chances of winning. Mr. Chair, I have a 19-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter, and it's unbelievable what they have at their fingertips today. And their mother and I do our best to monitor everything and raise them the right way to navigate. But there's just a lot of options out there now, whether it's regulated or unregulated. It's a complicated world. It's changing faster. And to your point on that chart, you can see the impact all of this has had on the DC lottery in time.
Yeah, and I guess you would say the chart does not reflect a decline in the amount of gaming and gambling that is happening. The chart reflects the share of it that is captured. All right, and I don't want to get too hung up. I mean, we have talked about advertising. We've talked about my reticence around advertising. I think that,
yes, sir,
to the extent that there's an argument that it has an impact, it's a staunch the bleeding impact, not a dramatic increase in demand for the products. We're getting there.
Okay.
My hearings end up going longer than I go pretty long.
You take your time.
I take my time, and I have a great team that has prepared me, so we.
No
get that
problem at all.
done.
I'm happy to answer any questions. Stay here as long as you need us to, sir.
All right, well, we all want to have lunch, but so let's, during the performance oversight, you mentioned there are staff dedicated to the creation and promulgation of rules for commercial bingo and post-hearing responses. You noted that that you have plans to have the rules filed in the District of Columbia Register by April 2026. Where are we on the rules for commercial bingo?
Certainly, we are working with Peter's group, regulatory, on the rules. They've provided them to legal. Now we're putting them in the proper format and giving them a legal review. So that should be very soon.
They should be very soon.
Very soon, yes.
You also indicated that even as you're doing that, you have had outreach from a potential commercial bingo operator. Where does that stand?
So we need the rules in place first so that they can submit a formal application to conduct commercial bingo in the district.
But the idea would be they're looking for one location that they could do this?
Colorado, do you?
The one potential applicant that we talked to, I think what they told us is they were looking at locations in the district where they could have a commercial bingo take place. They said it was very challenging because they tend to look for large size venues, warehouse type large. But that nonetheless, they were still searching for places in the district. That was a couple of months ago when they told me that.
How large? What is that warehouse like large?
Warehouse large. We visited one commercial bingo location in Maryland, and it was a large warehouse.
Like how many thousand square feet?
I would venture to say that was probably, my guess would be about 25,000 square feet.
Okay. My understanding is that there's some pop-up bingo events that have been held in the district at various locations, maybe including the Howard Theater. How do these pop-up locations differ from the commercial bingo described in the legislation?
Yeah, we have the charitable bingo that takes place, that we do authorize, and that takes place in the district. There has been, we've been alerted to some other potential pop-up bingos that were occurring at the Howard Theater. We contacted the organizers of the event, and when we talked to them about how it functioned, it turned out it really wasn't bingo. They just called it that. But it was really a game show that they put on. And so it had very little to do with bingo. Whether you win or lost, it was based on your talent up on stage and not necessarily your bingo card.
Oh,
But they called it bingo.
so it's very different from commercial bingo.
Yeah.
And did you then conclude, oh, we don't have oversight over this because it's not bingo, or do you feel like you have oversight over that?
No, it's really just a game show, and it had nothing to do with gambling or it was talent based, and so it's not something we regulate.
So you looked at it and you thought it isn't somebody getting around the rules and doing commercial bingo when they shouldn't be doing commercial bingo. They're calling it bingo, but it's something different. And so it's not our department, and you moved on.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end. We will see you again in a little under an hour and a half, I suspect. So, and let's save all the conversation about the iGaming issues to then. But is there anything that I have not asked about that you think is important that you want to raise before we close this hearing on the general budget process out?
No, sir. I think we've hit all of the topics. I just want to say I greatly appreciate you and your staff and all of council for everything. And I know that we've got some RFPs coming up here in the near future, and those items that you mentioned are very important to me as well. And I promise to have all the communication that's necessary between your office and mine as we go through these processes to be there. And we're just doing the best every day that we can for the people of our great city. And I know you are too. So I appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's stay close because you do have a lot on your plate and it's time sensitive. So let's stay
Yes, sir.
together. For those watching, if you plan on submitting written testimony for the record, please do so by uploading it to the council's online hearing management system before the record closes at 5 p.m. on May 11th, 2026. As a reminder, the Committee on Human Services will reconvene at 1 p.m. today in room 123, this room, for a hearing on Bill 26-0656, Internet Gaming and Consumer Protection Act of 2026. The time is now 11:37 a.m. and this hearing is adjourned. Thank you. Take these. Oops.